Well, we will talk about it. Before I start, I'd like to introduce a few other members of our family. My wife, Nancy. She's put up with me for 52 years. Yeah, I'll play that. Our son, Todd. My sister, Mary. Told you about it. And my brother-in-law, Rich. A little history with Rich right away too is that Rich was one of the original police officers when Fairview Heights was formed. He was one of the original police officers in Fairview Heights and retired from there as a lieutenant with the Fairview Police Department. I am so happy to be able to talk to you a little bit about my family. I think you'll know why I do what I do and how I go about it after I tell you a little bit about the family, because I'm extremely proud of both sides of the family. And I'm going to talk one thing about a location that is was on Vincent Straits. Anybody know where Vincent Straits is? Vincent Straits, if you look at the land maps of my great-great-grandfather's original properties, which go back into the mid-1800s, what is now called Route 50 was called Vincent Straits. It was then called Lincoln Trail and then became Route 50. But back in the early 1800s, it's recorded on there as Vincent Straits. And my great-great-grandfather moved there or developed the ground. There was quite a bit of ground that they had there. If you're familiar with where the Becker's Tavern or Dandy Inn was located, family had property on 3 corners of that intersection. Across the street where the little wine place is at, used to be the 7-Eleven, was my grandfather's. And then where the gas pumps are at now, one set of gas pumps, that was my Uncle Emil. That was my grandfather's brother who was there. So the history of the Becker side of the family goes back into the early 1800s. My great-great-grandfather, John Lambert Becker, is buried in the St. Clair Cemetery here in O'Fallon. You won't find the marker because it is completely worn off. But you've got to remember as I talk, this is not about a business. This was a location that my sister and I called home. We were born and raised there from about 1952 until the 1970s. And so that wasn't a business. It was our family. As I said, we have many photos, which I'm going to share with you as we go through some of this on different things. Some of the photos show it as a mud road, and it was originally a mud road in there. There was several different buildings over a period of time that were built there. It started out as a livery stable, had some lodging with it, had a stagecoach stop, and later on, of course, had a tavern, had a dance hall, had a grocery store, had a filling station. So it's had a number of different things there. One of the things that used to be used for an awful lot was that as the farmers would come in from like Carlisle and be heading into East St. Louis or St. Louis, they would come there and they would normally have a hitch in front that was pulling the wagon in, and then they'd have a hitch in the back. And when they would reach grandpas, they would change hitches, move the one that was in the back to the front. Grandpa would then take and feed and rest the other hitch while they went on into East St. Louis or to St. Louis. And when they came back out, they would switch the hitches again and then make their trip on back to Carlisle, Becherer, Breeze, wherever they were, wherever home was going to be for the rest of the evening. So that was one of the things that they got an early start on. There was rumors, and I can't confirm it or deny it, that at one time Abraham Lincoln was there. I honestly don't know, Mary. We've heard the rumor, but I can't say I can ever say that Grandpa told us anything about it or anything along those lines. About 1890, this building that I'm going to show you was built on that property by our great-grandfather, Henry Becherer. Many of you who have been in there may have seen a copy of this. This is the original. This is the original one. This is our great-grandfather standing right here. And this is our Grandpa Becherer standing right there. I have on the back of here a list of all the names of everybody who's on that picture. So I can tell you who everybody was that was on that photograph when that was taken. This building was built in the 1890s. This was then followed up by this building, which you're probably all familiar with, which was built in 1933 by my grandfather. Grandpa said he would build a new building once they ended Prohibition. And that's when this building was built. You see standing in front of there, my sister's family and our family, the day before it was torn down. They destroyed it on a Monday, and we took this picture on Sunday. We were able to get just about everybody there for that picture, which is a great remembrance because you see these little rooms up here? As I said, this was our home. This was our bedrooms, was upstairs. We also had a bathroom upstairs and a big hall, which was used for a lot of different things. And I'll explain some of those as we get going through that. So there was a lot of good memories there. We had a lot of fun, but there was also some sad memories there. We had some family members that passed away there. Our Uncle Arvel, our sister, my mom's brother, who originally was in business with my dad and mom, passed away with a cerebral hemorrhage right there in the living room. Our grandfather, Grandpa Becherer, passed away sitting out by the corkball cages. If any of you remember the corkball cages that were out there. He sat out there on the picnic table with our dog, and he would do that every morning with a cup of coffee. And one morning, Mom gets a call and says, "You better look outside. Your dad's laying on the ground." And Grandpa had passed away suddenly with a heart attack. Had not been ill, but passed away suddenly. So we had a lot of good times there, and we had a lot of memories there that occurred over a period of time. There's a story of me and one of the things that I did to my little sister. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
No, I didn't. All right.
Right.
Good, everything. Sorry. Okay, I gotta go move the box. Sorry.
He asked if the name plaque on that building, which was on the front of there, was K. Becherer. It was saved. it was saved, the city of Fairview Heights asked me if they could have it. And they were going to put it on the stone, which says, "Welcome to Fairview Heights." It was never placed there. And I keep asking, and I do know they have it. And they keep telling me that they're going to try to make some way of putting that on that property because, you know, my sister and I talked about that and our cousins and so forth, but that's where Grandpa would have wanted it, on that piece of property. That was Grandpa right there. Yeah. The story about the Vincennes Trace, that really surprised me when I started looking into some of this, when I found the deed and found that. But in 1952, our mom and dad took over the business. My dad at that time had been a superintendent of maintenance for Peabody Coal Company, over 3 different mines for them. Now you got to remember, my dad, somebody asked me a couple of months ago, who did I look up to, who did I honor? It was my dad. You might say, why? I've met a lot of good people, very intelligent people. Here's why. That man quit school in the 8th grade. Why? More than that. His father was killed in a slate mine accident when he was 32 years old. My grandmother was left to raise 2 children. My dad and a younger sister who was very ill at the time as a young and had a lot of medical bills. My grandma worked as a seamstress in a factory and cleaned homes at night. Dad quit school to go to work at the foundry out here to help pay the medical bills for my aunt. He then went off to World War II, came back from World War II, and I'll tell you some more about him later as that relates to it. But when he came back, he just was so good with his hands and just his thought process. And he taught me one thing that was so very important. Communications, it goes 2 ways. Most people use this, but this part here is maybe the most important part. But Dad went over, and Dad and Mom took over the business with my Uncle Arvo in 1952. And then, like I said, my Uncle Arvo passed away in 1956. So Mom and Dad took it over completely. My little sister there was born in 1952. And there's a story of me, supposedly I was supposed to be watching her and in the baby carriage, pushing her around the backyard. It was a nice backyard we had back there, some nice shade trees beyond the parking lot. All of a sudden, somebody yelled to my dad or my mom, said, "Do you see where your daughter's sitting?" They looked out. I had left the baby carriage sitting in the middle of Highway 50. Okay, she survived. I survived, a little wounded afterwards, but I survived. But at the same time, there was another portion of our family that existed, and that is the Roach part of the family. And they were on the east side of town. My great-grandfather, my great-grandma Roach, and my grandpa Roach, like I said, was killed when he was only 32 years old, had a farm out there in the Blackjack area. And they're buried out there. They're buried out there, and we take flowers out there on a regular basis. at Christmas time and everything. But they told a story about great grandpa Roach when he passed away. He was 90 years old. When he passed away, he had a habit before he would go out in the fields. That habit was that he would get a shot of whiskey with his coffee and his big breakfast in the morning before he goes out in the fields. And then at night when he came in, he'd have a big dinner. They had a veranda and a swing out there, and he'd sit out there and he'd have one highball and one cigar. Dad told the story that when great grandpa passed away, he came out and one of his sisters came out and said, you know, if it wasn't for his drinking and smoking, he'd still be alive today. 90 years old. That may have been what kept him going so long. I don't know. But, you know, our family has been involved over the years with so many things. It wasn't just a business. My mom and dad helped sponsor so many different sports programs. They helped sponsor so many things at St. Albert the Great Church. I was in the first class that graduated that went all the way through St. Albert the Great. But they were so involved. Matter of fact, here's one of the photographs of one of the teams which they sponsored. The team was unfortunate. They had me on there too. But there were some other good people that ended up being on here. That's me in the center. There was a gentleman by the name of Harvey Holliday, who was an alderman here in town for many years. Well, Harvey originally lived right up the road on Old Collinsville Road. 3 of his boys are also on this photograph that I played ball with. Then we had a city attorney who retired a few years ago by the name of Dale Funk. That's Dale right there. We all played together on the same ball team. And one of the things that we did right across the street, where it's now a Economart, used to be a pig farm. And for about 2 years, they knew this farm was sold and they were going to build the Economart, but it wasn't built yet. So they had these nice big billboards out in front on Route 50 showing what was to come. Dale, the Holiday boys, myself, and about 3 or 4 others would take our lawnmowers over there and cut out our baseball field. And we would use that as our right field fence. Those signs were our right field fence. They didn't ask about how the one hole got in it, but our family ties are in many different directions here with the Becherer family, with the Roach family. If any of you are familiar, I can just tell you a few of them. My grandma Roach was a Schultnick. So if you've heard of the Schultnick family, well, that's relation. If you've heard of Bush Farms, out off of 7 Hills Road, Grandma Bush was a Roach. That was my grandfather's sister. So, and there's so many others that I can go on and on of telling about. But what I loved about our family was what they would do. And even when Mom and Dad got ready to sell the business, and they did that only because Mom became very ill with cancer. And they decided to get away where they could enjoy stuff. I know the last year or so before, or 2 years before they sold it, Nancy and I had just been married. So we would spend the weekends there to let them get away, let Mom and Dad get away. And they'd go down to their clubhouse down in Red Bud, and that was their getaway place for everything. We also had to have somebody in the place all the time, because I always have fun kidding our dispatch people, our 911. I says, you know, I used to do your job. They look at me like I'm crazy, because we had, when it started, we had a red phone hanging on the wall downstairs and one upstairs by the bedrooms, because we did all the dispatching for Fairview Heights Fire Department, or at that time, was not Fairview Heights, but French Village Fire Department. And you had to have somebody present. Now, later on, we became modern. We had the red phone, and then we got a black phone. The red phone, we took the calls in, the black phone, we picked up, and it automatically, we didn't have to dial everybody, it automatically rang in everybody's home, so that we could dispatch all the firemen out for the fire calls and so forth. But that was something that Mom and Dad, my grandfather, always did to try to help and do anything they could. When Dad and Mom sold that business, I saw the books that they had, that they helped so many people. Where family needed gas. They needed some groceries. They never collected on those bills. They helped them because they knew it was the right thing to do. So, am I proud of my family and my heritage? Hell, yes, I am. And that's why I look at this city the way I do. This is family to me. And you try to do the best thing you can for your family. And then it came along that there was some other memorabilia I've got here, and I'll share it if anybody wants to even come up. I've got pictures of my grandpa and grandma. I've got a picture of a horse-drawn wagon. I've got pictures of Dad leaning in out of the window where they cash checks for all the miners. The miners would come over there, and this is where they cash checks. Paid them all out in cash. Mom and Dad would go up to the bank. When they started, this was our bank. I used to walk in here and go up to the teller windows. This was the First National Bank. This was the only bank that there was in town. Then I can remember when Mr. Tolman farmed the Bank of O'Fallon. Rumors are flying. Oh God, both banks are going to fail. We can't survive with two banks in one town. What do we got now? About 13, 14 banks?
All you have to have is a corner.
But, you know, I got pictures of the old cart ball cage. I've got pictures of my mom and two of her sisters and her brother. I've got pictures of the last day the business was open. Matter of fact, here's some pictures of the mud road that I told you about. We've got those pictures, but this was copied from the paper. There was another thing too that go back in history, and this doesn't definitely relate to our family, but it's something that ties to my dad. There was a confectionery store here in O'Fallon many, many years ago. The lady who ran it, her name was Ma Rush. Ma Rush was related to somebody who we all know now.
President Reagan.
President Reagan. President Reagan would come down here during the summers. He and my dad became very good friends. They would go fishing together. They'd play checkers. He'd help. If there's President Reagan would come and help Dad. They did so many things. I have a letter that President Reagan wrote my father when he was president on my dad's birthday. So there's a lot of different little things like that. But then there was a thing that occurred about 5 months ago. And this will be what I wrap up with tonight. Nance, you got my envelope. You can bring it here. About 5 months ago, I told you my dad was in World War II. Dad never talked much about the war. I knew Dad had been wounded. And I knew Dad had caught malaria in World War II. I knew Dad had been wounded because when he would take his shirt off, I could see the scar. And I asked Mom, and she said, "Oh, that's where Dad got wounded." But I didn't know was a story behind it. And this is the first time I'm telling this in public. I share it with our family because I just found out 5 months ago. I shared it at Christmas time. And that is, Dad got wounded because he went on to save a vehicle that was full of US troops that had gone down a ravine and had been hit. Dad climbed down that ravine and in so doing got wounded. And he finished hooking up, I don't know if it was a chain or a rope or a wire or whatever. And they were able to pull that vehicle out and to save him. And I found a photograph that said to Master Sergeant Herbert Roach, condemned, congratulations on being awarded accommodations for being awarded the Bronze Star for his activities. And I found that picture. I found his Master Sergeant. And in the original case was his Bronze Star that he never once mentioned to any of us. So am I proud to say I'm Herbert Roach Jr.? Damn right I am. That's a little bit of a story about my family. Any questions?
What year did they sell your parents sell the business?
Mary, what was that? 77. Yeah, 77.
You mentioned the hall. What was the hall for?
They had a number that used to be held for dances. A lot of different groups would hold parties over there. There was a lot of meetings. I was in the Black Knights. The Black Knights used to practice in there. My sister was in the Bellettes. They used to practice over there.
He may have been speaking about the upstairs hall.
Oh, the upstairs hall. Okay, here's an interesting, if you're talking about the upstairs hall was, again, they'd hold different meetings. They'd also hold, that was an election place out there. They would hold elections out there. I remember a story that came out when Mom and Dad, and they used to have to close all the bars down on election day. Well, Dad also serviced and sold gas to Caseyville Township road crews. And so one election day, they had snowstorm hit in April. And so Dad would have the back door open that they could come in. He'd fill up the gas pumps. He had Texaco gas pumps. The White Weeman was the distributor for gas out there. And they'd also, Dad would make sandwiches out of the store. He'd make sandwiches for them. And I remember this one time, a few of them were sitting in there eating their sandwiches, and Dad kiddingly looked over at the road commissioner and he said to him, he says, "Is there any truth to the fact that you're shoveling the snow into the driveways of those people that are voting against you, and you're clearing the driveways of those voting for you?" He looked at Dad and he said, "Damn you, Herb." He said, "If you keep saying that, somebody's going to believe that." No, but also a very important meeting was held in that upstairs that not a lot of people know about. The city of Fairview Heights was formed in 1970 on my birthday, October 2nd. In the late 60s, there was 5 or 6 meetings held up in that. They wanted to hold upstairs, so you didn't want anybody bothering. The mayor, O'Fallon at that time, a couple of the aldermen, and people who later formed Fairview Heights met. They wanted O'Fallon to annex that area all the way up to 159. Why? They were fearful of being annexed by East St. Louis, and they didn't want that. For whatever reason, our city's mayor and council members at that time said, "No, we don't need that, so we're not going to do that." About a year later, Fairview Heights was formed. My dad received the first liquor license issued by Fairview Heights. And about 6 months later, O'Fallon annexed everything right up the old Collinsville Road. But, you know, that's some of the history. Like I said, it goes back. Our family has continued to have businesses. They've continued on. Nancy and I have had a building that we had our business in, and we continue to rent out there. My son has had a business. His wife is about to open up her second business. She has a restaurant over in St. Charles, and she's about to open up the High Point restaurant here in O'Fallon. So we have continued the small businesses for, I guess now, well over 150 years. And I'm proud of not only what they've done to keep those businesses, but I know and realize the hard work that went in behind it. And I'll tell anybody, and I've told some of my professors this, I probably learned more sitting at the breakfast table and at the dinner table, listening to my dad and my grandfather talk than I probably did from almost any professors that I took classes from. I'll open it up for some questions. Oh, here, I almost forgot to show you this. It's heavy.
Tag beer.
This hung in both of those buildings, the old one and the new one. The frame is original. There's nothing been retouched on it.
Looking
It's
good.
over 100 years old. We had it rehung into this shadow box, and that hangs in my office right next to both of those building photographs. But we know it's over 100 years old. It is when Stag Beer was owned by the Griesedick brothers family. It's changed hands several times since that time before it moved out of Belleville. But it's a heavy little sucker too. Told Nance, I says, you're gonna have to help me. I can't get this. So, questions, anybody else? Yes, sir.
And Mary, you mentioned your family farming in the Blackjack area. What is that? I'm not familiar with that. What is that area?
Okay, if you go north on the Scott Troy Road, you know where there's a big dip and then it comes up the hill. Okay, you'll see there's an old cemetery on the right-hand side there. Take that road and go back, go east. And that's the Blackjack area back in.
How far back was your farm back then?
I couldn't tell you exactly how far back. I don't know that. I was too low. Grandpa passed away in 52. I was 6 years old.
You're just along for the ride.
You got it. Yeah, that's for sure. Yes.
What was that area called before it was annexed to me, or before it became Fairview Heights? Was it French Village? Was that what it was?
No, it was.
No,
Fairview.
just
It
Fairview.
had an O'Fallon mailing address. Matter of fact, Mary went to O'Fallon High School.
But it wasn't officially part of it.
It was actually in the county, but and also you may find some familiar names, but this is my mother's diploma. It's in the original wrappings and everything. And there's some very familiar O'Fallon names that were in her graduating class, including Mr. Hinchcliffe, who was principal and signed this, and who one of our schools is named after also. Other question? Huh?
It was just Fairview.
It was just, that's basically, you know, what we called ourselves on the baseball team, we were called the Crossroad Cardinals. Yeah. But if you went down further, they would call themselves the Fairview Tigers or something like that, or Fairview. And then we had the O'Fallon Indians and O'Fallon Dodgers. And we played up here on Community Park. Yeah.
Was that cornball or softball?
That was baseball.
Baseball.
That was baseball. And then we had the park ball cage in the back. And, you know, for a number of years, we had park ball leagues, probably 3 or 4 different leagues in there. One was a league of most of the Catholic churches around the Belleville, Fallon, Fairview area, all had teams in it, and they would play out there. Yeah,
I know my dad and her uncle played cornhole, but I don't know if they were, they were Catholic, you guys were Catholic either, so.
but there was other leagues out
Yeah,
there too,
I think
and,
that's why they wanted the
you know,
Protestant ones.
there was a group of us younger guys, and we would get out there and we'd even take on some of the older gentlemen. Yeah, like park ball was a different sport. You could really make that park ball dance, and you could really
never
break
seen
off
it.
some
I've never seen it.
curve balls with it. And I can tell you, if you had somebody who could throw hard, he left a good one too.
How big around was the ball?
Ball was not much more than that.
Like a golf ball, a little smaller than a golf ball.
Yeah.
That's
Smaller
all
than a
right.
golf ball?
Yeah.
Huh?
Smaller than a golf ball?
Wasn't it?
No, I'd say it's a little bit bigger than a
Bigger than a
golf ball.
golf ball?
It had the full seams and everything like that. The bat was only about this big around.
Yep.
The real pin bat,
Round or flat?
round,
Round.
round bat,
Regular
round and
baseball.
long. It'd be about this long normally.
Was it played in, you say cages, were those like practicing cages?
It was a wire cage. I've got a photograph up here of one of them,
Keep the
but it
ball
was
in
all
there.
wired in. And what you would do is if you hit it beyond a certain point, it was a fair ball. And then if you hit it another distance, it was a double. But you had singles and doubles basically on it. And the pitcher's mound was a regular 60-foot pitcher's mound. And ours was all lit. Later on, when they tore that down, that ended up going down to Evan Mills. And where it started out was, it was originally down at the KC Hall in East St. Louis. That's where Mom and Dad got it from. And they brought it up to there.
Did you guys live at in the place when it was a business? You live upstairs or?
We lived upstairs. We had 4 bedrooms. We had the hall. We had a restroom upstairs. And then downstairs, we had restrooms. We had kitchen, living room, and then we had a screened-in porch. And then down in the basement, we had a shower. And that was an area where Mom did all the wash and everything down there. There was one thing that I really, really wanted when they tore that building down, because I knew it existed. That was, there was a 2x8 support beam that had my mom's signature on it and my uncle's, because they were the only 2 still living at home of the children when that building was built in 32. And it was as clear as can be, but when they moved out of the building, they shut the power down and it flooded the basement. And they said they couldn't salvage it. So, yeah. Mary, you got anything to add that I have? I can tell you a great story about my little sister. When she turned 16, she was wanting a car.
Didn't
She
we
was,
all?
huh?
Didn't we all?
Yes, she was wanting a car. And my dad came in and said, Mary, I got something for you. Her eyes lit up. Said, what? Said, there's a Mustang out there. She went bolting through the door out onto the porch. It's a Mustang lawn tractor. Ended up with what, a Fairlane Ford? Was that what you ended up with? Ford Galaxy, okay.
600.
Got her Ford though.
She got her Ford.
I loved it, no matter what.
Yeah, Vern.
Now the cork wall thing was taken down, and then you built the, I guess it's called, I remember it's called, was it called Turner Hall or something?
No, that hall was always back there.
Okay.
That
back
hall
there
was,
Even before.
That was
the
about-
cork wall was?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Where was the garage at?
The garage was right next to the hall.
On which?
That garage originally was a home.
Okay, the question I have.
And you
about
know
this-
what? This beer sign that's in here, I found that up in the attic of the garage.
Because when I was working construction out there, we dug the sewer line in behind that garage. And there was a wonderful supply of insulators that were buried there.
Oh, yeah, they had a ton of those laying back in there, the
There's-
old insulators.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Was that a dumping ground for the?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no, there was also a chicken farm back there, just like my, my grandma Roach. And I'll mention my grandpa Cook, because after many years, grandma remarried and married John Cook. And that was the only grandpa I really knew there was Grandpa Cook. And Grandpa Cook was like the rest of the family in giving back. Grandpa Cook died of black lung as a minor. We actually lost 2 people in our family. But he served over 40 years as a volunteer fireman here in O'Fallon. And his name is one of the names on the plaque at Firehouse 1. And if you go out and you look at the photographs in the firehouse out at Firehouse 4, and I thought I knew it, and I had to ask the chief. I says, Chief, do you have the name of all of the people on there? He says, yeah. I says, who's this one? He says, John Cook. I says, yeah, that's my grandpa. So his picture is out there. It's one of the first full fire trucks that they had, and grandpa was on that truck. But that's also how my grandma Roach met Grandpa Cook, because grandma's brother, Shiltnick, one of the Shiltnicks, was on the fire department with grandpa, and introduced grandpa to grandma, and that's how they met. They lived over on Vine Street. Matter of fact, one of my chores over there every Saturday morning was going and cleaning out the chicken house.
Great job, great
Fun
job.
Great job. Great job.
Dad, somebody had asked where the blackjack was, so he's buried off of Lebanon Road, right? That intersects with Blackjack Road.
Yes, yes.
So that's northeast of here, headed towards Troy, Lebanon.
Yeah, but that's where great grandpa, great grandma, and Grandpa Roach are buried out there. And that's where their farm was out there.
Yeah, that big includes Lebanon Avenue, so Lebanon Road.
Yeah.
Is that a national cemetery, Blackjack? Is
There are 3 different cemeteries back out there. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, there are 3 cemeteries out there.
Yeah, blackjack.
Yeah.
We gotta finish that.
Yeah.
We're cemetery detectives. that's what
I
it is.
know. Yep, no, there's 3 cemeteries back
Three
out there.
cemeteries out there. We'll have to check that out with your permission.
No problemo. Any other questions? Well, I thank you. I thank you for allowing me to share some information about my family. And hopefully you know a little bit about our family and a little bit more about why I am the person that I am. And, I have to give a plug real quick too, to my son, because he continues the giving. As you probably know, he's one of our council members, but last week he received an appointment by the governor that he will be one of 9 who is serving on a special appointment to advise state agencies on how to take into consideration in emergency planning dealing with people with handicaps and disabilities. He has been a voice for MS, helping and serving here in the St. Louis region. And of course, he gets some other feedback from our daughter, Kate, who is the assistant principal at the Illinois School for Autism. So he walks into that with a lot of good information and is looking forward to being able to help people as well. Other questions? Too quiet a group. Yes, sir.
What's the Shulman connection with your family?
What?
Show the-
Shiltnick? My grandma was a Shiltnick.
Right, what was
Stella.
My mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't sure of the connection. She had mentioned years ago. that people
Yeah.
There was a relation.
Yeah.
but I didn't know what.
Yeah, I've got it all written down, how it traces back, perfect. Our son named his second daughter Stella, after grandma. Yes, sir.
Taking an interest in ancestry. So what's the earliest you trace your ancestry to the Oakland area, and where did they originate before they come there?
Well, we had a family reunion, shoot, I guess it's 35, 40 years ago, Mary. Longer. That traced back the Becherer name. And the Becherer name comes from Germany, of course, but there are a lot of heritage around the entire St. Clair County and Madison County area. The Roach side comes from Limerick, Ireland. And we have traced, Nancy and I were over in Ireland and traced some of that as well. Matter of fact, when I went and talked with somebody over there, and they said, oh yeah, this Roach was, one of the Roaches was a archbishop in the Catholic Church. And then we found out there was another, one of the Roaches was what we would call a gigolo. Well, the first time I told somebody over here, they said, was it the same person? No, but, you know, so, yeah, so the Beckers comes from Germany. I remember the Monsignor, I'm trying to remember his name, from St. Patrick's Parish, would always come to the tavern. And he came up every 2 weeks like clockwork on a Friday afternoon before the crowd came. And he would always tease my dad. He says, what's this damn Irishman doing working in a German bar? You know, but he would walk out every week with a fifth of scotch and a carton of Parliament cigarettes.
Maybe
So
see
your
the next
Becker-
Every 2 weeks.
So your Becker family came here as part of the German migration. to
Yes.
the farming areas. and they
That
came
is
in.
correct. That is correct. And then on the Roach side, it was a lot of mining and farming, right? Yeah. Other questions? Mary, anything more to add?
Just the ROACH wasn't. the spelling.
Wasn't the original spelling, no, it was changed to be more of a German type spelling when they came over here, because why? Because the
They used
Irish
them.
Like
was
the Irish.
looking at the lazy drunken bums, so that's why they changed the spelling. Yeah. I thank you all very much. I hope you learned something, and I hope it was worth your time.